Hi, my name's Isabel Thompson and my sister once handed me a clipboard, then called it a favor. She knew it was a calculated move to keep me in the shadows, just like when she'd dismissed my talent as a child. That same night, she made me stand up in front of 250 people and play the same piano piece that shattered me 14 years ago. She thought it would break me again. She laughed, but what no one knew was I'd already survived the silence, the kind that doesn't echo in rooms, but in families. And that night, I didn't just play, I remembered who I was. What would you have done if your own mother stood and clapped for the wrong daughter? It was like when Martha praised Celeste for my $2,000 0-cent scholarship win, claiming it was her inspiration. Before we dive in, what time are you watching this and where are you listening from? Drop a comment below. Let's talk about family and what it means when they don't see you until it's too late. I showed up an hour early because Celeste had asked me to help check the lighting. That's what she said in the family group text, which, unsurprisingly, only included me and our mother, not her own husband or any of the actual event staff. She'd done the same when she roped me into organizing her $10,000 0-cents fundraiser, taking credit for my work. The Ohio River looked dull and gray through the glass walls of the venue, reflecting the heavy clouds of a Cincinnati October. Inside, everything sparkled. White orchids lined the tabletops. Gold-rimmed glasses shimmered under chandeliers. It was a gala, but not for a cause. It was for Celeste. Celeste Foundation, Celeste Board, Celeste Guest List. I was here apparently for Celeste's convenience. As soon as I walked in, one of the young assistants, no older than 21, handed me a clipboard and a lanyard. "Volunteer badge," I said, blinking at it. "Mrs. Celeste said to give this to you," she replied without looking up from her phone. It stung like when Celeste gave me a helper role at her $5,000 0-cents charity auction, ensuring I stayed invisible. It dangled off my hand. Plastic and cheap-looking red block letters. Volunteer. I slipped it over my neck anyway. My reflection in the glass told me what I already knew. I looked out of place. Navy blouse, flats, hair tied in a practical twist, not like the women in heels, and diamonds who'd be arriving soon. Before I could even orient myself, my mother emerged from behind the main table, hands full of silverware. "Oh, honey," she beamed. "Thank you for helping out. We were drowning here." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I was used to being helpful. Invisible, too. I followed her to a side table where trays of table numbers and small floral centerpieces sat waiting. These go in the middle. Celeste thought maybe alternate the white roses and lilies, but Edward said it was too busy, so just do what looks nice. Okay, Edward, our grandfather. Even he had more weight in decisions than I did. Just like when Martha ignored my input on the family's $15,000 0-cents reunion, favoring Celeste's ideas. I nodded and started placing centerpieces one by one. The venue filled slowly, heels clicking on polished floors, laughter rising like bubbles in champagne. I passed through them like I always did, quiet, purposeful, unnoticed. Celeste finally swept in around 6:30, glowing like she'd swallowed a spotlight. She wore gold silk, of course, always did when donors were present. She found me near the drinks table where I'd just finished placing folded napkins. "Isabel, you're a lifesaver," she said in that voice of hers, sugary and sharp. "Doing this at the last minute, truly. You didn't have to." Her words echoed the time she thanked me for planning her $3,000 0-cents gala dinner, only to exclude me from the guest list. I smiled like I always did. "It's fine. Really, though," she said, glancing over my outfit. "You clean up well. That top is sensible." Before I could answer, she disappeared to charm a board member. I wandered near the stage to adjust some programs. Celeste had asked me to make sure they were all evenly placed. While aligning a stack, a woman in pearls standing nearby turned to me. "My daughter plays piano too. She's only 13, but she's working on Mozart already." I nodded politely. "That's wonderful. I used to play a little." "Oh, Her brows lifted with interest, but before I could finish, my mother passed behind me and chuckled. Yes, when she was what, 11? I froze. Celeste was right behind her. You mean like chopsticks, right? It was like when Celeste laughed off my $1,000 0 cents piano recital award as cute at a family gathering. The donor laughed more politely than genuinely. I laughed too, quietly, then excused myself to refill the water pitchers. My hands shook just slightly, enough that a drop spilled over the rim as I walked. No one noticed, or maybe they did but didn't care. Back in the corner, I stared at the wine glasses, watching the candle light dance through the crystal. For a moment, I wasn't 34. I was 16, sitting at a black Steinway on a stage in Cincinnati. The spotlight was warm. The keys were cool beneath my fingers. I didn't play chopsticks. I played Rachmaninoff with both hands from memory. That life, my life, had disappeared after my wrist fractured in the fall. One mistake, one silence too long. I never returned to the bench or the stage or my voice. You chose this silence, I whispered. You chose to disappear. And yet here I was, arranging napkins. At 7 o'clock, guests found their seats. The room dimmed slightly. My mother sat at the front with Celeste's in-laws. I remained standing. That's what volunteers do. Then came the clinking of glass. Celeste holding a flute of Prosecco center stage. She flashed a perfect smile. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're not just raising $90,000, 0 cents for the foundation. We're celebrating the power of performance. And I thought, what better way to begin than with a little surprise? My stomach turned. She looked straight at me. Play something for us, won't you, Isabel? Her smirk reminded me of when she joked about my $500 0 cents music camp scholarship being a waste. People turned in their chairs, heads swiveling like we were at a dinner theater, and I was part of the show. I stood there, still holding the cloth napkin I'd been folding just moments earlier, blinking like the lights had suddenly gotten too bright. I opened my mouth to laugh it off, maybe say something like, oh no, I haven't played in years, but the words didn't come out fast enough. Celeste filled the space for me. Oh, don't be modest. You were such a little prodigy, weren't you? There was an edge to her tone, like sugar with a crack in the coating. It was the same tone she used when she claimed my $2,500 0 cents recital prize was family money. Our mother, seated at the front with her champagne, added, It'll be fun, just one little piece. People love that kind of thing. Fun? Sure. I tried to smile like nothing cracked under my skin. My voice finally found its way out. I really haven't played in a long time. Celeste had already turned toward the stage. A stagehand in a headset brought out a slim black folder and placed it on the grand piano's music stand. I thought this might be perfect, Celeste said, loud enough for everyone to hear. She used to play it when we were kids, back when she wanted to be somebody. There was a smattering of polite chuckles. I hadn't moved yet. My feet were glued to the floor. Then I saw the sheet music list's transcription of Beethoven's Fifth. My mouth went dry. I hadn't seen that score in years, not since Chicago, not since the night I had locked the piano lid shut and promised myself I would never touch a key again. The sounds of that night came back all at once, the spotlight baking my skin, the orchestra behind me waiting on my cue, the air too thick to breathe. The page had blurred, my fingers refused to respond. Then came the silence, longer than it should have been, and no one moved to help me. No one even asked. Now here it was again. That same piece, like a trap I hadn't seen coming. Celeste gestured toward the bench. Come on, don't make us beg. Her words cut like wind. She mocked my $1,000 0 cents conservatory application as delusional. I could feel the burn of every pair of eyes in the room. Donors, board members, foundation staff. Edward sat still, unreadable, his hands folded in his lap. Martha tilted her head and mouthed something at me. Just pretend. Right. Pretend none of this hurt. Pretend this wasn't cruel. Pretend it didn't feel like standing in front of a firing squad armed with applause. I walked to the piano. My legs moved without my permission, like I was walking through someone else's dream. Or their nightmare. The applause was scattered, but polite enough to make it awkward if I turned back now. I sat down on the bench. It felt too low, or maybe the room was too high. Everything suddenly felt off, tilted. Celeste bent down near my shoulder before she stepped off the stage. Her breath brushed against my ear. Try not to faint this time. It was the same venom she spat when she said my $800 0-cents piano lessons were wasted on me. I didn't flinch. She didn't wait for a reply. She smiled and glided away, her heels tapping a soft exit. I looked at the sheet music, still the same, black notes printed like landmines. My hands hovered above the keys, my palms were clammy, my fingertips trembling. The keys looked unfamiliar and intimate all at once. My heart slammed against my ribs. If I walked away now, I'd hand them exactly what they wanted. The proof that I never belonged here to begin with. Celeste's story would stand. She could have been something, but she just didn't have it. Was I really going to let her write the ending again? Like when she rewrote my $3,000 0-cents music grant application to favor her own project? I looked out across the hall. People were watching politely, some leaning in with curiosity. They didn't know what this was. To them, it was a party trick. A woman playing a song at her sister's fancy event. No big deal. But I knew what it was. It was a dare. It was a trap. And it was a choice. I placed my fingers on the keys. The air thinned. Then the silence fell heavy. I played the first note, and something inside me cracked open. The first note rang out low and full, and the room went still. I didn't look up. I couldn't. If I made eye contact with anyone, Celeste, Mom, the donors, I'd lose it. So I focused on the keys. Black, white, familiar, steady. My fingers found their places like they'd been waiting all these years. I hadn't meant to play it like this. I hadn't even planned to play at all. But once that first note broke the air, it was as if a little door inside me creaked open and something walked through. I didn't play it like a showpiece. I played it like I needed to breathe. I wasn't even halfway through the opening when I caught it. A voice near the front. A woman in a deep burgundy dress, clutching a crystal glass, leaned toward her date and whispered just loud enough. "This will be fun to watch." Her companion gave a quiet chuckle. I give it 20 seconds before she tanks. I didn't miss a beat. I didn't need to, because by the time I moved into the Allegro section, faster, sharper, bolder, those same voices had gone silent. I could hear the tiny shift of their posture, the slow uncrossing of arms. No more whispered bets, no more smug smiles. The ballroom didn't just quiet. It recalibrated. My shoulders loosened. My breathing deepened. There it was again, that thread of something inside me that had been strangled years ago. It wasn't pride. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity, like coming up for air after holding your breath too long. I didn't see Celeste, but I could feel her from the wings. The temperature of her attention had changed. I imagined her fingers tightening around her champagne stem, and then Mama said she can't play. But Grandpa said she wrote this song. It came from the side, high and bright, Nora's voice bouncing across the break between movements. I stumbled just slightly but recovered. It was like when Nora accidentally revealed Celeste had sabotaged my $4,000 0-cents audition slot. Gasps fluttered through the crowd like soft rain. Someone dropped a fork. Martha, I knew without looking, had frozen mid-blink. The sound had the weight of innocence, but the impact of a grenade. I kept playing, but inside the past cracked wide open. It wasn't Liszt, not anymore. It was a piece I'd once written during rehab when my hands would shake for hours just holding a pencil. I'd been alone, sitting in a cold practice room with nothing but a metronome and doubt for company. I'd pulled fragments from memory, phrases I'd never dared show anyone except Edward. He'd visited when he could, sat in the back with his coat still on, thermos in hand. He never said much, just listened. When I showed him the melody, he nodded and said, "That's yours. Keep it close." I hadn't realized Nora had heard it too. Back in the ballroom, I let the melody soften. I let it speak, and now I could feel the weight of their eyes, not as judgment, but something else. Recalculation, recognition, or maybe shame. I saw Lawrence Hayes lean forward in his seat, brow furrowed. He was one of the main donors, the kind who never missed a performance segment. His fingers tapped once on his knee, then stopped. For the first time all night, he was still. Martha didn't move. She didn't blink. If I knew her, she was replaying every smug comment she'd made over the years, every time she'd said, "Well, she gave up, didn't she?" Like when she claimed my $5,000 0 cents music scholarship was unearned. I reached the final measures and let them land gently. No dramatic finish, no showboating, just restraint, control, presence. I didn't bow. I didn't look to Celeste. I just let the silence do the work, because I didn't need them to clap. I just needed them quiet enough to hear it. The silence that followed my last note was not the kind that begged for applause. It was the kind that settled in people's throats and stayed there, heavy, uncomfortable, honest. For a few long seconds, no one moved. Not a single chair creaked. Then, from somewhere near the back, a single pair of hands clapped twice, deliberate and steady. Another joined in, and then another. It spread like a ripple until the whole room was standing. I sat still on the bench. I didn't dare turn around. I kept my gaze locked on the keys, letting the echo of my own heartbeat fill the gaps between their applause. The music was over, but the sound of it still hung in the air. A woman across the room dabbed her eyes. A young man in a university hoodie clapped above his head. Even Lawrence Hayes had stood, arms folded across his chest, eyes no longer skeptical but thoughtful. But in the front row, Martha remained seated, her expression unreadable. And Celeste? She stood frozen for a beat too long before clicking her heels forward and taking the mic like a pageant queen. "Well," she began, her voice wrapped in honey but dripping steel. "Thank you, Isabel, for that impromptu surprise. Now, let's move on to the silent auction portion of the evening." Her dismissal stung like when she erased my name from the $7,000 0 cents family trust fund. The applause faltered. A few people exchanged glances. Someone even muttered, "Wait, what?" Celeste's smile tightened, but she kept her tone light. "It's been such a gift to witness unexpected talent tonight," she said, turning toward me as if tossing a bone. "Let's give her one more round and let her finish." It wasn't loud, but it was clear. Every head turned. Edward. He had risen from his chair slowly but without hesitation. One hand gripped the handle of his cane. The other reached out and took the microphone from Celeste's frozen fingers. The man hadn't spoken into a mic in 25 years. Now his voice carried across the ballroom like it had been waiting for this moment all his life. "She's played half her life for silence," he said, eyes sweeping the room. Let her finish her own ending for once. You could hear the weight of it land. Martha blinked rapidly, her jaw working but silent. Celeste stood still, her face a mask, polite, composed, but crumbling at the edges. No one said a word. Then, without any music or signal, someone began to clap again, this time slower, fuller, followed by more. The standing ovation resumed, but now it wasn't just applause. It was alignment, a shift in the current. Someone raised their phone. Another angled theirs to film from the side. By the time I stepped away from the piano and slipped off stage, hands were still clapping and lights were still trained on the empty bench. Backstage, I exhaled. My hands were still slightly shaking, but not from fear anymore, from release. I found a quiet spot near the far door where a makeshift break table had been set with lukewarm coffee and little tea sandwiches. I sat down, letting the applause echo faintly through the wall. My phone vibrated in my purse. It was Nora. Somehow she'd snuck backstage and handed it to me like she knew it mattered. "Look," she whispered. "A clip, 45 seconds. Grainy vertical footage," the title read. She played like she was burning. Already over 1 million views, local hashtags, 1 retweet from a Cincinnati arts account. I blinked, sat with it. Burning. No, that wasn't what I felt. I felt like I had been released. And then I looked up and saw him, Edward, standing in the hallway just outside the curtain. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. He just nodded once like he was passing something down I hadn't known I was still holding up for. I didn't know it then, but that nod would break more silence than I ever could on my own. What secrets are buried in Isabel's past? Will her family's betrayal unravel further? Don't miss episode 2 to uncover the shocking truths Isabel discovers and how she fights back against Celeste's schemes. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss it.